I am pleased to introduce Purdy and Kimia, who have come to share their experience, strength, hope, and promises um, for 35 to 40 minutes. So go ahead, take it away.
Thank you so much, everybody. And thanks again, Paul, for asking us to be a part of this beautiful gathering, and to all of the service providers here, all the guardians, everyone who is attending. You're the reason why we congregate, after all. And so thank you for allowing us to be a part of. And, this part of the book that brings in that word extravagant, it asks, are these extravagant promises? We think not. What is extravagant? Expensive, costly? Is it high priced? Is it excessive? Is it unreasonable? Is it unreachable? Well, it says we think not. It also says they're being fulfilled amongst us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. That's important to me, to make note of that. And it's not going to be an overnight matter. This is going to require some good work, that they will always materialize if we work for them, not if I just keep studying them. This is the thing about promises for me. If the promises are not coming true, perhaps I need to work it backwards. And these promises are actually instructions. Am I working the instructions in those promises, or am I just waiting for them to magically happen? And this doesn't magically happen. Yes, there is intuitive work that happens along the way, but it is work, and it happens through action. And so in step one, I get to see that I am powerless over this disease. Drugs, acting out behavior, my thoughts, my life has become unmanageable. In my identification, I get to see what has failed. Everything that is part of my log and loser list. Everything that is a halfway measure. And it clearly says there are no halfway measures. And so in step two, I get to see, after reviewing the essentials, that I need to have honesty, willingness, open-mindedness. And so in that, I come to believe that a power greater than myself, this disease, could restore me to sanity. And so beginning with step three, promises. Step three itself is making a decision. It's a deeper incision that needs to happen into that psyche, to turn my will, my thinking, and my life over, my actions over to the care of God as I understand God. And to understand that at the very core of this, there's self-reliance. Yes, there are 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, but there's only one kind of self-reliance. And so in step three, promises, I get to see that when we sincerely took such a position, that it's God's business, not Kimia's business, that I have an employer, all sorts of remarkable things follow. Yes, all sorts of remarkable things follow in my family, in my job, in my service, in that order. And I get to see my relationships change as a result of having a new employer. Being all-powerful, God provided what we needed. Not what my sponsor provided, not what the big book provided. Yes, the instructions are absolutely important. They are essential. But the work that goes into that with this consciousness, a higher consciousness, that's the key factor. And so if we kept close to God and performed God's work well, it's almost like Bill was being funny, but he wasn't. Because the prescription is very simple. Perform God's work well. But it's a lifetime of working that. And so established on such a footing. What footing is that? That's God's business, not self's business. We became less and less interested in ourselves. I become less and less interested in me, myself, and I. Every thought that hovers around everything that is me, it needs to go. And so I become a little bit more interested, more and more interested in seeing what I could contribute to life. What can I contribute to my relationships, my family, the closest people to me? And sometimes those are the sickest people. And so I need to have that love and tolerance that we understand as our code to be applicable to the closest people to me. And so I feel a new power flow in. Part of that understanding for me is that I have to allow for this power to actually flow in. A new relationship has begun. I've taken a different position in that relationship. So I get to enjoy peace of mind. As I get to discover that I can face life successfully. I can't face life successfully if I don't face life at all. If I continue to push away the problems that I deem to be that of my doing. There's a self at work here. And I have to continue to see that there's a self that shows up as the parasite. And I'm the host. And so it shows itself as a defeat itself. It wants me in my anger. It wants me in my resentments. It wants me in my powerlessness. And it wants me to actually continue to move back to the sphere of insanity and death. And so I have to become more and more conscious of God's presence. I begin to lose my fear of today, tomorrow, and hereafter. And fear is a huge part of this. The flip side of that fear is the faith that is being promised here. And so I get to be reborn. We get to be reborn. And so, yes, part of the step 3 promises is working it backwards. Am I performing God's work well through the steps, through the prescriptions of this book? Am I on that footing where I've become less and less interested? That means lose interest in self, especially the defeated self. Because the core of that innermost self is actually quite beautiful. It's innocent. It's trusting. It's forgiving. It's loving. And so I get to allow for that power to flow in, and I get to enjoy a peace of mind. And as a result of that, I get to face life successfully. I get to have better relationships. I get to actually have relationships perhaps for the first time, where I'm not controlling the other person. I'm actually only responsible for what is mine, my thoughts, my actions, my behaviors. And I do not micromanage. There is no bullying behaviors. There is no mothering, murdering. There is none of that happens. So I get to be really right-sized in those promises. I get to see them happen as I get to see everyone to be on the same level playing field. That as the most intolerant and the most intolerable person, I actually get to experience tolerance towards the most intolerated. And so I get to be in that space of neutrality, which I will come back to. Passing it on to you.
Thanks, Kimia. Hi guys, my name is Purdy, recovered addict, recovering human being. Beautiful to listen to, absolutely. And thank you, Paul. Thank you for inviting us in to speak. Absolute honour and a privilege every single time. Get to do this with family, get to be in the solution, get to be in these steps, in these promises, in this work that has completely and utterly changed their life. And we hear it there. Step 1, that for me is a little problem. I'm going to drink and use again. I'm going to drink and use again. And we go through these steps, we hear the promises of 3, and then we get into 4 and make a searching and fearless moral inventory. This is where resentment is the number 1 offender. I get to see my part, me, my part, how I show up in it. I don't at first. It's everyone else's fault. It's your fault. It's my abuser's fault. It's the people that hurt me fault. It's everyone else's around me fault, but it's not mine. And we get into this work. We look at these columns and I get to see me. I get to see the 7 deadly sins. I get to see how I show up every single time. Me, I'm the problem, it's me. The problem is not the problem, it's my problem with a problem. That's the problem. And I'm twisted up. I can't think straight. And we come through and we do this amazing, amazing piece of work into step 5. And the promises are there. Once we have taken this step, withholding nothing. Never done that. I've manipulated and lied my way into, therapy sessions and everything for everybody else. But I withhold nothing. I feel a sense of ease and comfort from doing this work with someone in their step 12, with someone who's walked this path, with someone who's lived this life. I feel connected and I let it go. I let it out. We line by line go through this stuff, and there's an amazing freedom that comes for that. It says, withholding nothing, we are delighted. I was, there was a beautiful moment in that. And giving that over, we can look the world in the eye, it says. I think as we clear away that wreckage of the past, we clear away all that noise, the narrative that swarms and swamps my mind, that takes me into a bit of morass of self-pity, my thoughts and my feelings. It says we can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Rip the noises out of my head. I couldn't function. I could not function as a human being. I was so debilitated from a disease. I lost my voice. You guys gave me a voice back. God, this program gave me a voice back. I felt at perfect peace and ease. I did. It grows and it grows as we move on. But at that moment, I felt it. Our fears fall from us, it says. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. Yeah. And some beautiful little experiences, coming through the steps early doors and 2. And I remember that first real feeling for me. I always tell the story of the beach hut, but it was that real impactful moment early where I was in this searching, fearless moral inventory, and something happened. And I remember walking back up here to my flat and just being, really? And I felt it. says we've had certain spiritual beliefs, but we now begin to have a spiritual experience. I felt that sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. Bill says like a clear wind on a mountain top blew through. I felt something. I felt a presence. And the feeling that the drink problem had disappeared, it says, will often come strongly. I felt very quickly an obsession to drink and use gone. I really did. I really did feel it then. How? How has this happened? How has this happened when I could not? My kids, my babies, everything that I ever had in my life, my businesses, everything, my sanity, just me trying to pick myself up from the floor every single time weren't enough. Yet I come into program, I start to see these promises unfold in 5, and oh my goodness, we feel that we're on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. You know, page 75 of the big book. Amazing experience as we then get into the 6 and 7 seesaw, you know, where I start to build this relationship with God. Incredible. Kimia?
Yeah, and it's so beautiful that with the step 5 promises, where it talks about being on this broad highway, my experience has been that sometimes this broad highway is with less traffic. You know, less traffic of the mind, less people in my life, less gossip, less of that which draws me back into my insanity, into that defeated self. And so, yes, there is less false pride. There is less arrogance. I'm not willing to pick it up anymore because it's not mine. I am not willing to be convinced that that which defeats me is me. So there is less greed and lust and infidelity and anger and sloth and laziness and procrastination and impatience. There's less fear. I get to, again, experience this part of fear that is courage, that is faith. And for me to be able to see the light, I have to experience that darkness. And so in 6 and 7, when I've offered myself in that step 3 to a creator that actually restores me to a better way of thinking, where my common sense becomes uncommon sense. In my step 6, I no longer argue for my character defects because I'm convinced that when I argue for them, I actually get to keep them. I get to be resentful in all of my relationships. I get to be angry. I get to store that pain and that cancer in my body. I lose everything and everyone. And so in that humbly asking God to remove my shortcomings, I'm moving towards a part of this program that is offering neutrality of mind and heart. And in that neutrality, there's nonviolence, ahimsa. I get to ask God to really strengthen that which God has given me, to take away that which no longer serves. And so in step 8, when I become willing to even make a list, that which, by the way, has been already made in my step 4, I get to see where I'm headed in my step 9. I love the step 9 promises. It is hard work, and it doesn't happen overnight. Because in step 9, I'm relearning what it means to actually not injure others. Non-injury. Understanding that these steps, and so therefore the promises, are not supposed to harm anyone. I'm not supposed to shine through shunning others. That's not the way to get right with others. In step 9, I'm actually getting right with others. And so I get to see where my resentments could now be redirected back to a humbled way of reconstructing relationships where it's permitted, where it's non-injurious. Now, where it's actually giving me grounds to rebuild, especially with those I've disliked. I have to take the bit in my teeth. And that's not easy. You know, addicts who become guidable are the best kind of teachers and students because we become the most helpful and forgiving spirits. And I am of the spirit world. If you identify with that, perhaps that's the reason why you're here today. You know, confessing my ill feelings and expressing my regrets. It never talks about going into details about my actions. It talks about going into those darker spaces where we understand them as character defects. I have been blocked through my anger, my resentment, my worry, my anxiety, my inability to forgive. And so under no conditions do I criticize anyone or anything, nor do I argue, because that means more harm. And I'm learning that. Why am I even reviewing this? Because again, these promises happen as a result of working the steps. Without taking the steps, expectation of these promises is nullified. It just doesn't happen. And so before taking drastic action, which might implicate other people, I have to secure their consent. I have to consult with the properly appointed authority, and I have to meditate. And part of that meditation is a conversation with God. It's a two-way conversation. Sometimes the answers are in the silence, spoken by the greatest of gods. And so in step 9 promises, I get to see that if I am painstaking meaning no half measures, about this phase, that's my step 8 and 9 of our development, we will be amazed before we're halfway through. Yes, I will be amazed at how my life is changing and how my inner world is changing. My inner thinking is changing. It says we're going to know a new freedom and new happiness. And I understand that to be, I no longer look to serve for the purpose of just being busy. It's a new freedom. I don't have to have a packed schedule in order to feel my helpfulness, my usefulness, and a new happiness. I get to see where I can be of helpfulness in that new freedom. It gets a new meaning. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. I like to work these backwards. If I'm not experiencing new freedom or new happiness, well, am I regretting the past? Am I sitting in the resentment of the past? Am I wishing to shut the door on all that has happened? Am I still in some form of pity and self-seeking and selfishness and remorse? Those are the best friends to this disease. It says we will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. And that's inner peace. No one can give me that. No human aid can give me that. No relationship, no job, no opportunity, no amount of money. I've had capacities in my life much longer than a business card. That did not give me peace and serenity. I've had fat bank accounts. Did not give me serenity. The best life did not give me serenity. And so it says no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. Yes, that's why I am not to regret the past nor to wish to shut the door on it. That's how that promise becomes a reality, and it materializes as a result of having courage, as a result of having honesty to tell the truth. I understand this to be a truth-telling process. And so that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. That feeling that doesn't allow me to get out of bed so I can be of helpfulness, it will disappear. That's part of the step 9 promise, and it's a beautiful promise. I imagine that as being, having been lifted off of a weight that was never mine. And so when that feeling of uselessness walks away, I get to be free from bedevilments. I get to be free from the bondage of self. And so we will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Remember, in our step 3 promises, we were instructed that will happen, that I become less and less interested in myself and more interested in how I can contribute to life. This is the repetition of the same promise, that I will lose interest in selfish things. I will gain interest in my fellows. I will lose interest in defeated self, and I will gain interest in a God consciousness that employs me. And so self-seeking will slip away. Literally, I see that as rolling off. Just like water rolls off of oil. It just slips away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Yes, my attitude towards others will change. That I'm not intolerant towards the most intolerated. That I'm not constantly in this state of suspicion and fear about how someone's going to get me. Life's going to get me. My creditors are going to get me. I start answering those calls. Yeah. And so fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us, it says. Fear of people getting out of the house. Talking to others, talking to a newcomer. Even if I haven't finished the steps, I can show them where the bathrooms are. I can be of helpfulness. I can go out there and talk to our homeless siblings. Hey, what's your name? How many people do you think actually ask a homeless sibling what their name is? How long they've been out there? What it feels like to actually look at the world from that view. You're constantly sitting on the streets. You're looking up like a child that never grows. And so economic insecurity, as part of that loss, that fear of economic insecurity also goes away. I'm not worried about how much I'm making, how much I will make, how much I need. That daily bread will actually be provided. I believe in a God that actually provides that. And so we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. Intuitively know how to handle a situation with a sick family member. Intuitively know how I can respond to a very sick fellow. Intuitively, I will know how to handle a situation where perhaps my words are not going to really deliver the message, but my silence and my smile and my neutral attitude might, which used to baffle us, which used to throw me back into that resentment and fear, insanity and death. So that cycle of misery doesn't kickstart again. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. I always read this as, I will suddenly realize that God is doing for me and through me what I could not do for myself. And so I become that viable ground, that conduit through which this power continues to flow, and I get to be of helpfulness to others. And that's God consciousness right there. That intuition is also where part of the book that talks about our mental faculties are regained. You know, my mental faculties to make a decision, to have answers that do not need to be vetted by 100 people, by outside sources. You know, that mental faculty that is creativity, imagination, that there's a distinction between imagination and fantasy. And I don't have to constantly, vet this through others again to see if it is real or false. I get to intuitively have that conversation with the God within, and that God consciousness comes through and serves me. Purdy?
Thank you, Kimia. Oh, these extravagant promises. We think not. That feeling. We get to feel this stuff. I absolutely love it. In that, my favourite part is step 9, and so beautiful leading into that. And so, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. But that part, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That's a huge turning point for me. Taking the love from the fellowship, the broad highway, the possibility, living on a spiritual basis, and moving through and going and making these amends. But for me, the making amends process wasn't too tough. I know, I was willing to accept and take ownership because of doing these steps and seeing the lights in all your eyes. For me, it was the ones that hurt me, the abusive side of it. And I'll always remember that, we will see how our experience can benefit others, because there was such a moment in doing that where I had this incredible, walking up that garden path and getting the response that I got from that person, understanding that I'm here to do God's work, not God's job, and turning away from that point and walking away and feeling this free, feeling these promises, these step 9 promises, and understanding that everything has happened for me, not to me. All the pain, all the anxiety, all the stress, all the stuff that I've gone through in my life, all the darkness of my soul, I can turn. I can turn and I can be of helpfulness to others. I can turn and I can help others. And I love that. And it leads us in as we move through into step 10. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. I love these as we get through into this. Maintaining my spirituality, maintaining a spiritual way of life. I'm the type of guy that takes 1 step forward, 2 steps back. I have been all my life, and whatever I do, from my thinking will always take me back to a bitter morass of self-pity, to sinking in the quicksand, to being in the swamp that is my mind. However, with a 12-step fellowship, that 1 step forward, 2 steps back becomes 12 steps forward, 2 steps back to 10, 2 steps back to discipline, 2 steps back to understanding that I'm the problem. We get to live and breathe in all the steps in that moment. And what felt very jagged at first, what felt very, I'm doing this stuff, I'm robotic, I'm moving, now becomes an eyes closed, now becomes a breath. Spiritual training, spiritual practice, we're doing this stuff all the time. Years into sobriety, we're doing this stuff, and I've got the years that Kimia's got. 2 years versus 9, and I, thank God I'm forever teachable, and just listening to the way that Kimia goes in and out of the book and speaks. I can do a poem, but I speak in the book like she does. I've got a long way to go. How beautiful is that? How beautiful is that? So I live in all the steps. I live in all the steps in that step 10. I cease fighting anything, and we'll get to the promises in a minute, but I just want to really lay it out, that that becomes a pause. In the pause, I become wise because I'm not floating around like Buddha. You know, absolutely. I am an outright mental defective. And when I want to take over and I want to run the show, which happens, I end up in pain. I end up suffering. You know, I need to get into that moment where I close my eyes and have that conversation. I'm back. Are you seeing this? Are you seeing what's going on here? You know, and I get that opportunity to live in all the steps. In step 10, I can close my eyes. I can do that inventory. I can look on it and understand that I'm in 6. Understand that I am my defects. I need to be entirely ready to have God remove defects of character. And all I'm doing is I'm shrinking Purdy and growing God. Column 4 to column 5. My will to God's will. That spiritual seesaw, as I call it, as I go in from 10 into 6 and 7, have all of me, good and bad. I might mantra, help me be loving, 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 help me be kind. Help me be loving, help me be kind, whatever it is, just to get in that moment. Why do I need to do that? I need to do that because my steps tell me. 1, I'm powerless and my life is unmanageable. 2, I need to believe that there might be a power greater than Purdy out there. 3, I hand it over, I have that conversation, I'm here, you know, I give it to God in that moment. 4, I see my part in it. 5, I'm having a conversation with you right now, God. 6 and 7, I'm in that spiritual seesaw, I'm entirely ready to have defects of character removed or this way of thinking removed and switch it for spiritual principles. Switch it for love. Love is our greatest energy. 8, I fill my heart back up with love. 9, do I need to make an amends? Not really so much anymore because it's a thought process and I'm dealing with the thought process. Do I still think these things? Absolutely. Absolutely. Do I want to punch someone in the face? Absolutely. Do I want to punch myself in the face? Absolutely. Do I feel that what someone said isn't right? Absolutely. Do I feel sometimes what I said isn't right? Absolutely. You know, it's less and less now. But I still have these little thoughts. And that's where I get an opportunity to close my eyes. In 10, close conscious contact with God. In 11, lean into my step 12, which we're going to talk about later, which keeps me so far removed from 1. And those step 10 promises, you know, and we have ceased fighting anything or any, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone. That's huge. That is huge. That is the battle. That is the fire. You know, I listened to a share on 6 and 7 the other day and I said, everything is 6 and 7. Everything is that transfer of self to spiritual. And that fight, that internal fight that I'm going on with in my head, you know, that whatever it is, how I turn up, my default setting, when I can stop, there is an incredible peace and an incredible serenity, as it says in the step 9 promises, that I take through into 10, that I take through when I go into prayer and meditation later. But when I get into inventory, sanity will have returned. Sanity does feel like it is returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as though it is a hot flame. We react sanely and normally. That hot flame, those things that I just spoke about, you know, that's the hot flame. How can I recoil from it now? I can see it. I can stand outside of myself. I can see me showing up. I can see other people showing up. You know, I can see it. And whereas before I'd want to judge it or I'd want to work it out, do I want to be right? Do I want to be wrong? Do I want to be free? I want to be free. And we'll see that our new attitudes toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part, it says. It just comes. That's the miracle of it. I truly believe that is the miracle of it. We're not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. This is our experience and this is how we react, so long as we keep in fit, spiritual condition. What a beautiful promise. Kimia?
You know, the beautiful thing is that these promises actually show us that the bedevilments as we know them can be reverted. You know, and the bedevilments are telling us we're having trouble with personal relationships. And those are the closest people to us. However you would like to understand that as. It could be a relationship with a family member, a friend, a colleague, an intimate relationship. That we couldn't control our emotional natures. We were prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. How can I? How can I make a living or not be prey to misery and depression if I'm constantly and full of fear? I'm unhappy. I have this feeling of uselessness. And so I can't be of real help to other people. And, you know, this part of the bedevilments that's talking about people, places, and things. people comes first. There's that people addiction, that validation seeking, the people pleasing, the micromanaging. I need to be in control. I need to get what I want for it to be exactly what it was meant to be. There is no understanding of God's will. But at this point in the promises, we have a whole new attitude and outlook upon life. Part of that outlook and attitude upon life is that perhaps God doesn't want anyone to be in your life right now. Maybe you do want to be in a relationship. Maybe you do want to have that job. Maybe you do want to make more money. Maybe you do want to have a better car. But that needs to wait. It's going to be on God's timeline. And so for me to understand that, it means I got to go back a little bit to see where have I been continually believing that that which I know to be the truth is the truth. I mean, I can't differentiate true from false, but at this point, I've gone through step 9. The promises are coming true. It does take time. This new freedom might actually feel rather weird. That broad highway having less traffic. Why don't I have so much drama in my life? Why am I not giving re-entry permission to people that have harmed me and I've harmed them? And so I start asking those questions. So this part that Purdy just took us through, the cease fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, drugs, obsessive compulsive behavior, I need to reconsider what that cessation of fighting really means. Because I can cease fighting anything or anyone, but I may not stop fighting the cancellation of noise. All of a sudden I wonder, is this boredom? Am I bored? Do I have too much time on my hands? No, under God's will, everything is already as it's supposed to be. There are no mistakes. My sanity has returned. So why do I keep renegotiating if I'm okay or not? Why do I need to be looking at others to tell me that? And so that validation seeking part also starts moving away. And I do understand that to be a fear of. And that fear of, I'm constantly looking in the outward, I'm looking outwardly to get that approval. But it really needs to come from within. And so I stop seeking that feeling of love that I'm so determined I too deserve. We all do. But I need to have a new conception of love. And in this conception of love, there are no conditions. It's agape. I don't have a checklist for a future partner unless they, qualify for these items that they are not worthy of my time. And so I don't write people off so quickly. I don't enter so many relationships, and I don't owe so many relationships to others. This culture around just going around talking to so many people to see who is the right fit. God already has someone in mind for me. Do I have the willingness to see what is going to come forward? And I need to be working on those things within me so I can actually recognize it in someone else. I want someone to be honest. Am I fully honest myself? I want someone to be completely loving and forgiving. Have you been loving? Have you forgiven some of the closest people to your life, in your life? And so, this part of ceasing fighting anything or anyone, most of that activity actually is centered in my mind. I'm constantly fighting the idea that I know what's right. And so this idea of neutrality, to be safe and protected by God, not through my disease, not through my selfishness. And that is being in the eye of the storm. Why being in the eye of the storm is important? When you're in the nucleus of the storm, you are not affected by what's going on around it. And I'll just continue to go with it. I'll be in that neutrality regardless. I can be in a most chaotic situation, but tap into that consciousness and find that moment of peace. It says it just comes. That's the miracle of it. But it doesn't just come without the work required. And so to be placed in that position of neutrality means I continue to do this work. It's on a continuum. It doesn't end. It's like we work the steps, but really it's an escalator. It just keeps on going. And so that neither cocky nor afraid means big shotism will kill me. And, sometimes cockiness for someone like me, cockiness is not about, being outright cocky and just, outspoken or trying to put someone down. Sometimes it means I walk away from it knowing that I'm right, that you don't know anything. And so, yes, by the time I get to step 11, I seek prayer and meditation to improve this consciousness with God as I understand God. Praying for knowledge of God's will. What is God's will? Purpose. What does the book say about purpose? That your purpose is to help others. That's your sole purpose in life. Simplify. And the power to carry that out. What is that power? That power is not self-will. That power is agency. It's the power to act independently and make my choices. Willpower is the mental strength to exert effort. And so agency is a broader macro level concept. Whereas willpower is this micro level self-control to overcome immediate temptations. But it says we recoil. So it's possible to have that access to a much higher ability to see things from that drone view, from that zoomed out view. So through prayer and meditation, it means meditate, reflect, sit in discomfort, get a little bit more intimate with yourself. Get a little bit more intimate with the discomfort that you've been pushing away and, trying to walk away from. To be cleared of wrong motives. My thinking has to be cleared of wrong motives. It says my thought life will be placed on a much higher plane. What is that higher plane? That's God consciousness, where God has given us brains to use. And that's the mental stability around decisions that my faculties have returned. And so I do a self-will test, God's will test. Is it honest? Is it pure? Is it unselfish? Is it loving? It must have all four principles. There is no in-between space for Kimia between a yes and a no. It's either a yes or a no. The in-between kills me. And I heard a beautiful fellow of mine today say, if it's not a yes, it's a no. Yes, it's that simple. If it's not a clear yes, it's a no. Just like that. And so in my step 11 promises, I get to see as we go through the day, we pause. I call that pause land. That's where God resides, on Pause Street. When agitated or doubtful, what does that really mean? As we go through the day, there's mindfulness embedded in this process. This is a spiritual plane of thought, meaning I have the willingness required to align my mind with God's will. There are no halfway measures. This is a BYOW program. Bring your own willingness, Kimia. When agitated and doubtful, it means I detected that agitation and doubt has come up. A character defect has come up. Are you going to cheerfully capitalize on that opportunity to demonstrate God's omnipotence? Are you going to be enthusiastic about it? And so when they come up, I strive for spiritual assets. Character defects come up. Striving for assets come up. And so that's why that spot check inventory becomes so important. We pause. That's connecting with God right there. That's a big promise coming through that I can pause, that I can detect something has come up. Asking my Creator, what would you have me be? And notice, my fellows, it doesn't say, what would you have me do? What would you have me be? Everything that is a being is in that column of spiritual assets. Be loving, be kind, be tolerant, be quiet, be forgiving, be active, be mindful. And so we constantly remind ourselves we're no longer running the show. That's course correction for Kimia right there. I am not in charge. A power greater than me is. I am powerless over my intolerable situation. I am to turn it all over to the care of that entity that restores me to sanity, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done, thy will be done, thy will be done. And that's a mantra of its own. Say that 3 times and see what happens. That's continued connection and course correction right there. And so we are then in much less danger. This is working it backwards. I can't go around thinking, why am I not in less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions? I need to work this backwards. Are you pausing? When agitated or doubtful, are you asking for the right thought or action? Are you constantly reminding yourself that you're no longer running the show? In fact, the show was never yours. Get interested in somebody else's show. Get interested in all these other movies that are happening around you, not just the one that you want to produce and act in. Are you saying humbly many times each day, thy will be done? And so we become much more efficient. Why? It tells us because we do not tire so easily. We're not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works, it really does. What does that look like? Trying to arrange life to suit myself. That I want you to behave the way I want you to behave, even if I've never actually experienced you in that position. That I want you to not be sick anymore. That I want you to be the most kind, loving, caring parent in the world, but I've never actually seen you in that position. That I want you to be the most honest, giving, and selfless partner, but I've never actually seen you in that sobriety or emotional stability. And so when I try to arrange life to suit myself, I am burning up energy foolishly. And in this promise, it's telling me that I do not tire so easily, and therefore, I'm not burning up so much energy. Therefore, I'm not manic. I'm not in high drama anymore. In fact, I walk away from that very quickly. It's no longer mine. I'm not willing to touch it. Purdy?
Thanks, Kimia. Page 133. We are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. Cannot subscribe to the belief that this life is a vale of tears, though it once was for many of us, but it is true. We make our own misery. God didn't do it. Avoid then the deliberate manufacture of misery, but when trouble comes, cheerfully capitalise it as an opportunity to demonstrate his omnipotence. I love the lines in that part. And step 12 for me, oh my God. We spoke about, or Kimia just spoke about purpose. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, a profound shift in consciousness. Step 12 promises on page 89 says practical experience shows us that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. So true. That's that purpose. That's that darkness of the soul, being able to transfer it into helping others. I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like. I know what anxiety feels like. I know what depression feels like. I know the pain and the suffering and the misery of this disease. I know what loss feels like. I know. And I don't feel like that no more. After having had a spiritual awakening. That's incredible. What I get the opportunity to do now is I have purpose. I get the opportunity to put my hand in the pit. I get the opportunity to put my hand in when my brothers and sisters come in, crying their eyes out just exactly the same way that I did when I come into these rooms, not knowing left from right, wanting help. I get the opportunity now to guide someone. I can't run someone's life for them. I can guide them. And it says that in the step. We tried to carry the message. We tried to carry the message. And we'll finish off for me on that. You know, the promises. I love the step 12 promises. I love them. To watch people recover. Oh, wow. That feeling is just, I've got good, all my hairs are standing up on my arm because it's just an incredible thing to see someone so broken, just the same way I was, to see the light come on in the eyes, to see them help others, the promise says, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow about you, you know, create a fellowship you crave, to have a host of friends. We get to do things together. We're on the same path, the same spiritual path. Friends, relationships, however that sits in your life for your recovery, whatever you're doing right here, right now, we get this world that we never knew existed. I know why I'm a member of CA. I know, you know, I can be a lighthouse. I know I can be a hope dealer. I know I can turn all that darkness into light. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. And like I say, what an absolute honour and a privilege to be part of a fellowship that does exactly that. Thanks for letting me share.
And I will make a mention of this. The step 12 promises. That's a new conception of love. It really is. Because if I can love the most broken, the most intolerated, the ones who do not mix, then of course I'm willing to love in an intimate way as well. And so where it says life will take on a new meaning, in this new meaning, life doesn't lose meaning so quickly for me anymore. I don't wake up thinking, am I going to love life today? It's a blessing to be alive. My aliveness will continue to be there as I continue to show up for the people who do with willingness want to recover. And so helping others becomes a privilege. To see that loneliness vanish becomes a part of that lift and that shift. that neutrality of mind, body, and soul returns to me. I get to see a fellowship grow up about me, not just my fellows in recovery. I get to see the fellowship of life around me. And this is a new meaning of life, love. Not just that, intimate contact with someone who's going to be my forever after. This idea, this delusion that I need to have this happy ending. That happy ending is already around me. That fellowship that is noticing smaller things. To notice someone smiling and not wonder why I'm not smiling. To notice other people hugging each other and having a moment. To be happy about that. To be joyful that there is no envy. I've returned into a neutralized state of mind and body. There is absolutely no access to that column 4 anymore. I don't reside there anymore. I reside in pause land. In fact, I don't even go back to that column to check my mail anymore. And yes, I do get to have a host of friends. Maybe the number of these friends doesn't even matter, but one person who will show up, one fellow who will pick my call when I call them. That's an experience I do not want to miss. That's true love right there. And so frequent contact with the newcomer, the most intolerated, again, the most broken ones. That becomes the bright spot of my life because I get to see that I am you and you are me. And so intimacy gets to have a new meaning. Into me I see, therefore into you I can see. And it doesn't matter if into me you see. There are no conditions on this anymore. And so perhaps I can declare my readiness for a new meaning of life. And to see these promises are not extravagant, as it says. They are not. They're not that far-reaching. If I'm willing to do the work, the vision for you becomes a reality. That it's a daily reprieve. What is it contingent on? Maintenance, augmentation of the spiritual condition. Every day I get to carry this vision of God into all of my activities. What is the vision of God? What are my activities? Family, job, newcomer. How can I best serve thee? Thy will be done. Thy will and mine will be one. How about that? These are the thoughts which must go through us constantly. And so I get to exercise my willpower. There it is. Agency right there. Along this line, God's will. It's the proper use of the will. It means I get to make decisions. I get to really experience a new sense of interdependence and independence. And in that, I'm forever safe and protected. In that, I'm never alone. With a partner, without a partner. I will see the firmness of the ground that holds me. I will see the vastness of the sky above me. And that new definition is just so beautiful. Thus we grow. Absolutely we grow. That's a promise right there. That even those of us who never believed we could, we get to see that we will grow. And no, we will not forget that we have tapped into a source of power much greater than ourselves. And we get to see that, this matter of willingness, patience, and labor is important. And the promises get to be returned to us. The promises of living a beautiful life. This conception of, on the gravestone, you have your birth date and you have your end date, and there is that dash in between. There's a poem about that. That dash in between is a quality of life I have lived. I'm more interested in that today. How long I have lived doesn't matter. Have I lived well and in God's will? Have I helped others? Doesn't matter if I've left behind a legacy. The legacy is in being in that present moment of knowing that purpose has never left me. Thank you so much, beautiful fellows. Appreciate you beyond the beyonds.
Wow, thank you so much for your leads. I'm going to ask all